There we go. So what we're going to talk about today is sort of the mountain weather. So used to have to do this for sort of mountain leaders, but it's like really important, I think, for people just going out on the hill. Especially like this week, there's been a few sort of added risks of sort of thunder and lightning on the hills, best to be avoided. And we're just going to go through kind of understanding the basics of the weather, and then we'll look at like how you can practically get those weather reports. So effectively, this is how the world generally works. Around the equator, the sort of like you get these sort of circulations and base at different heights. And we are right up here, so we're kind of on the boundary, and so we get a lot of things coming across. And basically, obviously, the sun drives these weather patterns, and as you get sort of hot and cold air, they create different weather systems, which we're going to go into in a bit. For us in particular, we get different air masses. We get polar maritime, Arctic maritime, polar continental, tropical maritime, and tropical continental. Anything with the kind of term continental in it, it's come over land. It tends to be dry. If it's polar, it's cold. If it's tropical, it's hot. So similarly, maritime is going to be wet. So polar, we have colder, wet, warm and wet, hot and dry. And often when we know that the major sort of weather system is coming from that direction, you know, if it's coming from somewhere dry, we're going to have dry weather. Although this we can, you know, we've had a few Spanish plumes that bring thunderstorms. So and so effectively what you get when kind of a weather system produces is you end up with like hot and cold. The boundary between hot and cold starts it has a focal point, and it starts basically creating a low pressure point, and then everything starts to spin around it. And so we kind of go from like this would be a warm front, and this is a cold front. We're going to go into these in a bit. So this and effectively we get a storm system starting to rotate. So a warm front is we have air behind the warm front, which is warm, and it's moving forward, and you have cold air in front. Now, warm fronts are very long. So the distance between sort of here and here will be up to like could be 500 miles. You know, it's hundreds of miles, and so you can see them coming in because they've got high cirrus clouds and cirrostratus and altostratus, and then I think this is probably nimbostratus, and sort of like the rain you get will be kind of just not often torrential rain. It's often more kind of persistent light rain, like the drizzle. The cold front is the opposite. And because the cold air is pushing underneath, it's a lot steeper. And so we'll have, you know, this will be the warm front, and then you'll have different forms of cumulus. But because warm air pushes these things up, we can get heavier rain here. It's not important to know the names of these clouds, but what is important is that this distance here could be a matter of like, you know, 30 to 50 miles rather than that hundreds of miles. And so often in a cold front, we could get short, sharp batches of rain. And also, generally, cold fronts always go faster than warm fronts. So a cold front will go round, and we'll cover it in a bit more depth. Will eventually catch up a warm front and create what is called an occluded front. So this would be like the warm front going up still, the cold front, and basically it's them pushing all of the clouds up because the cold air is coming in underneath it. And what you tend to get is a lot more rain, because you've got the rain associated with the cold front and the rain associated with the warm front kind of conjugating together. As the cold front comes in, it starts pushing the kind of moist air higher, and as the air gets higher it cools, and we basically end up with more saturated air, which means more rain. So not many people know how to, or even have to, interpret things like this now, and we're gonna this is what I would tend to tell people is, if you see something like this, a nice high pressure, the fronts which tend to have the rain, so this is a pointy front, so that's a cold, I think it's a cold front. Yeah, is a cold front, and then the ones with the round bits are the warm front. So this, you can see this is an occluded front, so this cold front is catching up with this one. But over the UK, we have a high pressure, and high pressures, the winds go clockwise, so the wind will be going like this. A really good rule of thumb is the number of isobars across the UK. So in this one, there's like 2, so I would expect up to 20-mile-an-hour winds on the summits, but because it's the same contour, I'd be expecting very light winds, potentially dry weather. It looks, there's nothing messy over here, so I often would say it looks quite a clean forecast. Hopefully, when we look at this next one, this is like a low, and so if we look at this, we've got at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 9, so we would expect 45 knot winds at the bottom, but up to 90 knot winds on the summits due to the number of contours. This is like areas of equal pressure. And so round low pressures in the northern hemisphere, weather goes anticyclonic, so it's going all the way around here. So in Snowdonia, the wind will be blowing from this direction, which is, let me think, southwesterlies. So again, this is what we normally get. It's the prevailing wind comes from the southwest, and again we've got like this big occluded front. This big occluded front wrapping around here to where it then splits. We've got a cold front leading off and a warm front, and I'll try and go to Veta Central, and it's often good at demonstrating what I mean by the cold and the warm fronts. So often when we look at just those synoptic charts, we'll ask these questions, was low or high pressure, was it clean or messy, what wind direction will be, the wind strength, and the frontal systems. And hopefully we've just demonstrated that, but generally we don't have to go into that much detail. When it comes to interpreting the difference between, the weather you'd see on the BBC and the weather that you'd experience on a mountain, we have to understand that it's the higher you go, the windier it's going to be, the wetter it's going to be, and the colder it's going to be. So, like we said, I said about count the number of isobars across the UK, times that by 10, that's often the summit wind. Where we look at like rain lower down, if it's set to rain lower down, it's going to be even heavier higher up. And we know that there is a lapse rate. It's called the adiabatic lapse rate, in that as we go higher, the temperature comes down. So roughly for sort of wet air, it goes by about half a degree every 100 meters. But if you in dry, it can go to about 1 degree. So if it was like 20 degrees in Llanberis, reasonably dry day, 1,000 meters higher, just over that, it's going to be 10 degrees cooler. Add in, it's going to be windier, so sort of like wind chill is going to be more apparent, any wet rain. And I think this is the major thing that most people forget about when they're thinking about going into the hills. They look at the weather and they think, oh yeah, that's the weather forecast, but it's not. You need to either adapt the BBC weather to the mountains by realizing it's going to be windier, it's going to be wetter, and potentially up to 10 degrees colder, just in without the added wind chill. Yeah, so could be double the wind speed, double the rain, and like what I said before. So we can get reliable weather. So I'm just going to change over to this screen. So this is Windy TV. Now, often when I'm teaching people about weather, if we come into here, if I just go into here, this is a surface pressure chart. So you see this weird figure of 8 thing here. This is for today. You can see that weird figure of 8 thing is just there. And then can we pick out this warm front here? Yeah, I mean, you can see it's like if you come on Windy TV, it's not going to give you a mountain forecast, but it will give you an idea of, it shows you where, this wind is coming potentially all the way from here across and up, like if I follow these bits back, that this is what potentially is going to push in. But there are two kind of very specific mountain forecasts. One is MWIS, the Mountain Weather Information Forecast. If we go forecasts, yeah, there's all sorts of places. Just because I'm based here, let's go to LLE. So it starts off westerly breeze, extensive cloud fog with intermittent light drizzly rain and light showers. Looking out the window, that seems about right. Further inland and eastwards, the cloud base is higher and more often dry. So basically, the westerly is bringing hills out to the west, and then it's not got that amount of rain in it, so it's often just falling on those hills. And it just goes through, how cold at 900 meters. So it's only 9 degrees, despite the fact that it's probably, I'm just going to bring up a normal weather forecast so I can see current location. Yeah, so like the normal forecast is around 15 degrees today. It's damp air because we've had these things come in. So again, things to watch out for is, although this is the forecast for tomorrow, and it was updated half an hour ago, but I was on this earlier, and it was Saturday's forecast was done 4 o'clock Friday, and so there's a little bit of lag. And I'd certainly, within 24 hours forecasts are good, but as you get more and more into the future, they become more and more sketchy. So often what a lot of people do will hope that one is better. So the other one is via the Met Office, and again, it will give you certain hazards. So one of the hazards here is poor visibility. There's also some issues with thunderstorms and lightning strikes, heavy persistent rain, and strong sunlight. So this is the one, visibility could be significantly less than 50 meters. So unless you're a very good navigator, you might not want to be heading up unless you're following a very defined path. And then it gives you a breakdown of the weather and the temperatures at different heights. So, or the weather at different heights. This is the wind gusts, bring the temperatures up. So again, like I said, 14, 15 degrees in the valley, but like down to like 10 degrees, with add in that it's, in the valley, we've got sort of 9 to 20 miles an hour, but it's up to 30. And so often a combination of looking at different weather forecasts for where you're going, based on today or for going out tomorrow. Westerly breezes bring extensive cloud to the western hills and mountains with intermittent drizzly rain or light showers. Further inland and eastwards, the cloud base is higher and more often dry throughout the day. So my instant thing would be, I don't want to climb anything out to the west. So like the Nantley Ridge, Moorhebog, things like that, maybe even Snowdon. But maybe if I went over to the Carneddau or the Mulwins, I would get better weather. And often that is why what you don't want to do is get suckered into like, okay, we're doing this. Spend your time, decide where's going to be the best place to climb that day, and then when you go out, you need to realize that the weather that you've got off here, wherever you get your weather, this was a best guess for Sunday, and it had to be done before 4 o'clock. So, it's using data that's already out of date. And so often you need to, as you go out in the morning, is give it a weather check, and look up. Does the weather look better or worse, and change your plans accordingly. And I think if you go and look at the talk I gave yesterday about sort of heuristic traps and things that we do as humans, often we can convince ourselves it's going to be better based on the best weather forecast. And actually what you need to do is have a look around and make a decision of where is best based on that weather forecast. Anyway, that's a very short one today, but I just thought it's an interesting one to talk about the weather, especially at the moment. We had these thunderstorms. You do not want to be caught out in a thunderstorm. It would be terrifying. Other risks can be, heavy rain, strong winds if you're going across a ridge line in winter, snow and ice, and we'll do another one nearer the time. But yeah, just have fun out there, and Mount Weather Information Service, the Met Office, Windy, YR.no, and is another good one, another good model. And yeah, thank you very much. We'll come over here.